He counted us down. He's on it. He's on it
Yet
today.
again.
Welcome to Missouri Swagger, folks. This is episode 6. I'm Dennis Hopeless.
And
That's
I'm
Colin.
Cullen Bunn.
Oh, I guess I should let you introduce yourself.
I would like that, Dennis. Please let me take my fate in my own hands once
It's
in a
easier for
while.
me to just do all the talking.
That's right. Well, you like it, but I would rather at least announce myself.
All right. All right. What are we talking about today? What's the plan?
All right, I think we're going to talk about conventions, right?
Let's do it. That
This is
sounds good.
episode. Wait a minute. What episode is this? Six.
I
Episode
said that.
6, and we're going to talk about. Everyone's favorite, every creator's love and hate relationship with conventions,
Comic
right?
book matches, yes. Well, I mean, I basically, I guess love hate is fair.
Love hate's fair. When we met at a convention years and years ago, your favorite convention experience, I believe.
That's my least favorite convention experience. I thought, well, no, that's not true. You were very pleasant and very fake nice to me when I bought your book.
That
And
sounds like
then
me.
And then later you just blew me off. I also remember, this is funny because I remember vividly going to, it was HurleyCon in Joplin, Missouri. We went to a small show run by a friend of ours. And
Yes.
we went out to a steak dinner. And you told your cougar story,
Yes.
which you're definitely going to tell at the end of this episode. And I made what I thought was a really funny joke, and you gave me no credit for it. Like, you would just deadpan looked at me, and I thought, this is a funny guy. Why doesn't he like my joke? And now, as a 30-something-year-old man, I realize it's because that's the obvious joke that every asshole makes, and it wasn't funny to you because you've been telling that story for years.
Well, what was the joke?
Well, you have to tell the story, and then I'll
All
say
right.
what else.
All
I
right, let's see.
also remember making fun of B. Clay Moore for being old at that dinner. And now that I am not the youngest comic creator in any circle, I understand that people in their 20s constantly make old jokes if you're older than them, and it's never funny.
Yeah, it was funny. Just recently, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. But just recently, someone on Twitter uh, was trying to insult me, and they said, "I bet Cullen Bunn's 30 years old," thinking that that would be an insult to my age, uh,
Not-
and not realizing that I would give anything to be 30 years old once again. That I haven't seen 30 in many, many years.
When 30 only seems old for a very small window.
I like that. I like that every decade, 30 is the new 20, and 40 is the new 30, and I just want to keep backing that up. I want to make sure that when I'm 80, I want that to be the new 15 or something.
Well, it sort of is. Because you're sort of an adult, but you also don't have any, like, you have to have help to do everything. Nobody trusts you. You're not allowed to drive. 80 kind of is 15.
That's not funny. I don't like thinking about that.
Oh,
That's just around the corner, brother.
I feel like I'm going to be not spry. I'm going to be a sad, broken down old person.
Well, you've got
Or
too much
dead.
energy now. You got to conserve it. That's what I'm doing. That's why no one ever sees me in an excited state, because I'm trying to conserve my energy. You, however, see what you're doing?
Sick.
When you are at a convention in 2000 tickety 2 or whenever it's going to be, you will not be a spry comic creator. You'll be a very shaky man.
I hope I'm in some sort of like hover round situation where I just like have a little robot chair that I can drive around, so I can still spin, but I don't have to have any fitness to do it.
That's a good idea. Sorry. So conventions. What was your first convention experience? Either both as a fan. Do you
That's the
remember your
thing.
first fan convention?
I honestly think that's the problem with me in conventions. I never went to one as a fan. Like, I was a comic book fan as a child, but we didn't. I didn't have a local shop for maybe
Right.
there was one for a year or two, but I never really went. And my dad liked to take me to things that he enjoyed, so we went to car shows and tractor pulls and monster truck rallies and things.
All awesome events, by the way.
We absolutely. But he would not like seek out things that I would like that he wouldn't. And my mom would, but for whatever reason, we just never hit upon the comic book convention.
Yeah.
So I never went to one. And then I went to college to be a screenwriter, and then stupidly moved to Kansas City, Missouri, where there is at that time it was impossible to make movies. And I met Kevin Mellon, and we started doing comic book pitches. Like, I turned my awful short film ideas into comic book pitches. And my very first Comic-Con experience was San Diego Comic-Con with a packet of pitches to hand
Oh
out
my gosh.
to publishers. So
That's
I'm
the
walking around.
worst. That's the worst convention
Yeah.
to start out in.
It's the worst convention and also the worst situation because I'm walking around with these packets that no one's going to read, full of like this comic that shouldn't have been made. And I'm trying to pitch, like cold pitch, all these publishers who are getting that all weekend.
Right.
And I realize like I have no idea how to elevator pitch something. I have no idea how to explain the story. And
Years ago, one of my first San Diego's, I was sitting at a publisher, sitting with a publisher, talking to some people, trying to sell my work, and I watched people coming up, handing them their pitch packets, and the publisher would just take them and say, "Oh yeah, thanks," and then they toss them right into a box that I know got pitched at the end of the convention because it also had candy wrappers and coffee cups in it, so they were throwing them in the trash box.
well, and the fact is, even as a creator, when people hand you their stuff, by and large, you look at it, and unless it blows you away or you know the person for some other reason, you don't want to carry more paper home. You got a giant long box or
You know
two.
what I do? I actually always take them home.
Do you?
Always. I can't say I get to them very quickly, but if someone gives me something, I put it in my briefcase pretty much right away. And yeah, I always take them home and I try to look at them.
See, I used to always put them in my long box because, there's room in there
Right.
as you see anything. But I don't ever open my con shit in between cons.
Yeah.
So
So
I
you
will
see it
find
the next
it when
convention.
I'm
Right.
at the next convention. So now what I try to do is in my downtime at the table, flip through it. If there's contact information or, if it's awesome or whatever, then I will make note of that. And then the fact is I throw it away.
Right.
The fact is most people throw away your stuff you give them at cons because...
Most people do, unless they're me.
Well, you also have like a team of goons who carry in like giant crates. Colin is like the John Madden of comic books, where he drives to every show in a giant van full of books and has other people unload them for it.
That is my entourage, sir. And you would be lucky to be a part of it.
I like your goons. They're my favorite people, but you have them. I have no goons.
Well, the sad thing is all my goons, as you put it, I think of them as fine individuals, not
No,
goons.
they're your friends. I'm just saying
They've all moved on to other things. They don't have time for me in my conventions anymore.
Oh, well, that's true, because Jimmy used to be in the goon squad. No, he's
Jimmy
not.
was, and yeah, now he owns a comic shop, which means I kind of have to kiss up to him a little bit, and he's a writer in his own right.
No, I am the opposite. I am terrible at shows. I am notorious for showing up late and setting up after it's already open. I am notorious for not being at my table.
Yes.
Although I realized because my girlfriend this past Planet Comic-Con suggested that I make a timesheet of when I'm going to be at my table and when I'm going to be gone. And so I did. I posted online and I put up every day when I'm going to be here for these signing times. I had a dry erase board that said I was there, and people still complained that I wasn't at my table. And the only time I was gone was either to eat lunch or to do the panels that I had agreed to.
I don't know. You seem like you were gone a lot.
I was not gone. I was there 100%.
I know that at one point I took all of my stuff on your table and just set up my table, expanded it by another table, and took over your space for a while, which is my favorite thing to do.
Look, my favorite thing about being at a show, apart from being on panels with you and making fun of you, is interacting with fans. I like signing books. I like talking to fans. I don't particularly like selling books. When people just wander cold, I'm not real thrilled about this is Gearhead, which by the way, that's why I'm wearing today. I made these Gearhead shirts in 2007. I screen printed them in my kitchen, and then I baked the screen print on in the oven, and then put them in the fire.
Now I want a Gearhead shirt.
Oh, I probably got more.
I'm
The thing
boxes of them.
is, I'm much skinnier now, so this medium that's been inexplicably in my closet for 10 years fits. So it looks brand new because no one's ever worn it. But yeah, I used to sell these. I used to have these at show for sale for a while. It turns out nobody wants a Gearhead t-shirt except for people who have read Gearhead, which is an exclusive group. That's how we'll call it. But yeah, I used to go hard. Kevin Mellon and I were doing table reading together. We would do 12, 14 shows a year and pay for our table and have to sell to make the money back. And we had all sorts of prints and t-shirts and whatever. And the moment I got Marvel work and could just sign books people already paid elsewhere and not have to carry anything in, I became the laziest, uh, most not like a prima donna. Like I don't have high expectations of anyone else. Just have relatively low expectations of myself.
That's a good way to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Come on,
I
man, you
still
go
want to
hard.
bring all that stuff to conventions, and I think if you're doing creator-owned stuff, and I do a lot of creator-owned stuff, I think conventions are pretty important because otherwise people don't discover it, I guess.
Yeah,
And
and that's the thing. I have a really strange career in that I did two creator-owned books that got published and a bunch of stuff that didn't, and then immediately started doing enough Marvel work that I have not done a lot of creator-owned. I'm getting back to it soon. Actually have a book coming out this next year that's my big return to creator-owned. Um, but yeah, I've done mostly Marvel work, and that's a different animal. Like unless you've got a stack of Deadpool books, like someone I know that sell themselves based on Deadpool being Deadpool. Uh,
and also my Deadpool is the best Deadpool.
well,
You know, I'm
that's
tired of saying otherwise. It's mine is the best, and I'm not gonna be humble about it anymore. I write the best Deadpool. You heard it here, folks.
there are certain things. There are certain superhero properties that if you have a book with them on it, you can sell at cons because a lot of the people who are buying stuff at cons are not comic book super fans. They're casual fans who are wandering around looking for
Oh yeah,
something. So if they love Deadpool, they'll buy
well,
Deadpool.
there's a reason when I'm at a show, I put those Deadpool books with the big Deadpool symbol. I put them out face front so that people see them because it will stop those casual fans and they'll say, "Oh, I love Deadpool. I've
Right,
watched the movie 272 times."
right. And to a lesser degree, because she's not Deadpool, my pregnant Spider Woman does that. So I
Yeah,
have a bunch of whatever it's called, baby on board Spider Woman trade because women like mothers and pregnant women and stuff, they're like, oh, pregnant superhero. They have no idea who Spider Woman is. But
right.
then yeah, I'm really proud of this. It's gorgeous, drawn by Javier Rodriguez. You should buy it, and I'll sell a lot of those. Whereas something like my X-Men run, which sold really well in stores, and I sign a lot of other people's copies, it's not going to jump out just to a casual
Yeah.
wandering
Um,
fan.
I was trying to think of what my first fan convention was, and they all, I used to go to a lot of like hotel room shows where people would just set up in like small hotel rooms and just a few tables selling books. And it kind of blurs together, but I want to say that my first convention was Heroes Con years and years and years ago. I don't know how many years Heroes Con's been going, but I know I went to a convention there that I'm pretty sure was Heroes Con way back when. Um,
Were you still living in Carolinas, or you
yeah,
went there from
yeah, I was
Missouri?
still living in the Carolinas. Maybe it wasn't Heroes Con. I don't even know how long Heroes Con's been running. The reason it blurs together is because I think, and the reason I think it's Heroes Con is at the same time, I went to like a barbecue celebration at the store Heroes Aren't Hard to Find. And I remember that maybe even more clearly than the convention. I remember going to the convention and Rick Leonardi was there, and I got him to sign my Cloak and Daggers, and I thought that was awesome.
Let's talk about Cloak and Dagger and how amazing it is. Now you can download Cloak and Dagger 1 through 3 on Marvel.com.
Yes, you can download it at Marvel.com. Thank you for that plug, Dennis.
Oh, you're welcome.
Um, and then I went to this store, and I stayed there all day long because they were giving away issues of G.I. Joe that I needed, like as a door prize, and I wanted to be there when the G.I. Joe door prize came through. And I remember this dude dressed as Superman was walking around, and he said we were looking through back issues, and he was telling people, none of you kids better shoplift or I'm going to burn your butts with my heat vision. And then he introduced me to I was looking through X-Men, and he said, if you like X-Men, you'll probably like Teen Titans. And he introduced me to the Marv Wolfman Teen Titans run, and it was awesome. So that's
Wait, so in the 80s while that was going on?
yeah. So it was a long time ago. So like I said, I don't know I don't know how long Heroes Con's been running, but it would have been.
I mean, a good long while.
Yeah.
I feel like Latour has stories about being a teenager or younger and being there.
Yeah, so I mean, this was been when I was a teen. So anyway, it was a convention in Charlotte, and I remember it very clearly. It was fun. But then then I started going to like some Wizard World shows and as I got older. I didn't go to conventions for many, many years, but then when I started getting into writing, I'd go to Wizard World shows and uh, the show in Rosemont, Illinois. Right there. Yeah. I went to that one a whole bunch.
Where did you go before?
It was before it was a Wizard show. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then San Diego and New York, which were terribly overwhelming for me when I first went. And San Diego still feels overwhelming when I go.
One of my, I want to say maybe my second show ever. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I probably went to a couple local shows in between. But after that San Diego experience, I went and pitched. Well, there had to have been other shows in between. But I went and pitched Gearhead to Eric Larson when he was the publisher at Image. I hand pitched him. I just saw him on the floor at the very first New York Comic Con. And I had to do it on Sunday because on Saturday, and I'd flown to New York to do this with made no money, period, and definitely no money in comics at the time. So I spent everything I had to fly to New York. And that was the year that they wildly underestimated how many people were going to show up. So I waited in line for 4 hours to be told by a fire marshal I wasn't getting in on Saturday. And so I only got to get on Sunday. But because of that, a lot of people were turned off and didn't come back on Sunday. So it was pretty empty on Sunday. So I got to meet like Brian Wood and Brian K. Vaughan and Bendis and Oming. And yeah, I saw Eric Larson and I handed him my Gearhead packet, which was I think it was the whole first issue. And he's like, well, I can't read this here, but the art looks competent. You should send it in. And I was thrilled about that and sent it in. And he wrote us a very nice rejection letter a few months later that we were close, but not quite there. And he wanted to see more.
I think that's one of the most nerve-wracking things is pitching a comic to someone face-to-face at a convention.
Yes.
It wasn't a comic show, but I went to World HorrorCon in New York City one time. It's the convention where I met Jimmy Z, who we mentioned earlier. But I pitched to Axel Alonso while I was at the show. They set up pitch sessions. And I was friends with the person who set up the pitch sessions, so I just had her put me on all of them, and I was pitching to everybody. But Axel Alonso, what's that?
Was this when Axel was at Vertigo?
No, he was at Marvel. He wasn't editor-in-chief, but he was at Marvel. And that was the one I prepared for, and I brought several pitches. I brought a pitch for Moon Knight, and there's something else I brought, and I brought a pitch for Morbius series that Chris Somney drew a bunch of art for.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. And right before my pitch session, another writer came up and said, "Hey, just so you know, I hope you're not planning on pitching a Moon Knight series or pitching this series." And he rattled off everything I developed the series for. He's like, "Yeah, because they've got something in development, on each of those books." So I went into this meeting, and I just didn't even. I was like a deer in headlights. I had no idea what to do. Had no idea what to say. I did pitch my my Morbius series, but they weren't interested in Morbius at the time.
Well, they weren't interested in anything. That what you know now is you just needed to give amazing pitches for anything to show that you could pitch.
Yeah.
Even this day, I can't. If I pitch Marvel something, they're going to offer me something else.
Completely different. Yeah.
They don't give me what I pitch almost ever. I got all new X-Men after having pitched an X-23 series. You just have to show them you have story ideas, and then it's what they need or whatever. I guess maybe my ideas suck.
No, it's very rare that they pick up a pitch. You can send them pitch after pitch, and usually the best you can hope for is they're gonna offer you something different because they like what you were saying.
Right.
As Guardians of the Galaxy, which comes out in just a couple of weeks. There's my plug. I did pitch that to Marvel years ago, and they kind of sat on it forever until just recently, and they said, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do it finally." So sometimes it happens.
Right.
I pitched that, and Fearless Defenders were the only two books that were pitches that I sent in, specifically for those titles that actually got picked up.
Well, sometimes books will shift on you when you have them.
Oh yeah.
Avengers Arena, I was asked to pitch Avengers Academy relaunch that made a slightly harder edge Avengers Academy, and I did this whole pitch with new characters, and Pepper Potts was going to be the headmistress because Bruce Banner was the headmaster and was useless and was never around, and it was a shield-run military academy. I had all this stuff, and there was one line in my idea for Arc 3 that was Tri-Wizard Tournament meets Hunger Games when a
Right.
villain takes over some sort of event with other schools. And yeah, Axel and Tom saw that and were like, let's just do that. That's your book. Just give us a whole new plot outline that is just this, which is the best note I've ever gotten. But yeah, Avengers Arena came out of like one sentence from my Bible
Yeah,
for.
I think we were at a convention when you got that note because I remember being at a party with you and you came over and said, "Well, they just changed my entire pitch for Avengers Arena," and I think it was at a Marvel party because
Yeah.
that was in Chicago, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah, those good news, bad news calls are always interesting from the editor because they're like afraid you're going to freak out. But I don't know. I always feel like an editor's job is to point you in the right direction. And if you take the note with optimism, you can usually find, you know, you can figure out what it is that they're responding to and kind of head in that direction.
Or you can be like me and burn every bridge that possibly exists.
It's your favorite thing to do.
Apparently, I'm really good at it too. Judging from recent events, I'm very good at burning bridges, Dennis.
Good work. Good work.
Yes.
Uh,
But yeah, conventions. I think the thing people don't think about is with these shows, and the reason we say they're love hate is because I love going. I love meeting the fans. I love talking to people about comic books. But when we go to a 4-day show, that takes at minimum 4 days out of our work schedule.
yes.
And as freelancers, we don't make any money if we're not writing.
Right.
And,
Well, yeah.
and
No
that's
matter
tough.
no matter how well you're selling books, you could make more money typing, and your
Yeah.
deadline's going to be getting behind.
Yeah, I mean, artists can sell commissions and sell artwork and stuff like that, which I think helps their bottom line at conventions. But I don't think even artists can. I mean, unless they're selling a lot of original art, um, I don't know that they can make it. That make it worth it compared to actually doing the work. But we still do them because it's a great way to meet fans and a great way to interact with the people who are buying your books. So, I mean, that's why we still do them, I guess. But
Well, yeah, it's also I mean, this is where I work. See, there are no people here. So I have to go to a coffee shop to be surrounded by humans. Whereas at a con, like I get to see you, I get to see other people who do what we do, and like there's a whole community thing that happens with creators and editors and publishers after hours where we get to go out and actually like be a community together. And I think that's important to remind you. Like it's always like creatively energizing to talk to other people about what they're working on and talk to editors and seeing
oh yeah,
people.
that's true. I don't think I've ever gone to a convention when I didn't come back and was excited to get back to work and do some new things and everything, which
Right.
is also good and bad, I guess, because I get sidetracked with the different ideas, and I'll start chasing an idea and not focus on what I should be focusing on.
Well, I mean, that's just a constant struggle, right, in life.
Yeah. And my other constant struggle with conventions, I've been told this by for many years. I think you've even said it to me, but I know my good friend Brian Hurt has drilled this into me. Is I have a resting bitch face, I guess. Is that what that's called?
Yes.
That's what he told me I had. Where I just look like I'm always in a bad mood. My face, my default face is very
Grumpy.
what's that?
Grumpy?
Yeah, grumpy. So I have to force myself, and that's not the case. I'm almost never grumpy at conventions, but I think I put on that face that without thinking about it, that people are opposed to.
Well, it's also the case that being on when you're used to being alone in a room all day can be exhausting. There are people like Scotty Young, I think, is on all the time if nobody's looking. So it's
Right.
like really easy for him to go be charming at a convention. Or like Jason Latour, you can't turn him off if you try.
Right.
But for people like us, I think we spend a lot more time a little bit more chill. And yeah, that the reads is grumpy or standoffish, so you have to kind of like ramp it up, which I do for 20 minutes at a time for these things to keep you elevated. But
I
yeah,
just assume that I'm so good looking with my default face that people want to talk to me. Like they go out of their way to go over. They're just walking along, looking at cosplay. They look over. Oh, there's a good-looking man selling comic books, and they hustle over very quickly to hear my 6-gun pitch.
I've seen this happen.
But it's only when I'm smiling.
And when Cindy's there, she just slapped the shit out of him for getting anywhere near her man.
Well, that's
So, yeah.
true. She might. There have been times where she's like, "Why was that person so excited to meet you?" and she never believes it's because I'm a talented person and they enjoy my work. That can't possibly be it.
Oh.
But
Well,
that's
that's
the that's the burden of being such a Adonis, I guess.
yeah. Well, I mean, yes, you're a beautiful man. I would say.
Um, so before we stop talking about conventions, I do, here's my big plug because this is a Missouri, Missouri swagger. We're talking about Missouri, and we have a few listeners that are in Missouri. And I'm learning a different side of conventions now because I'm helping to organize a convention in Springfield, Missouri called CaveCon. And you're going to be there.
I would be there, even though I'm not on the website for some reason.
Yes, you are. I just looked last night.
Oh, did you put it? Did I
No,
find
I don't
this?
think I put it on there. You're on there. I think. I'll check again. I'm making a note.
We need to have a Missouri Swagger panel.
What's that?
We need to do a live show there.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do a whole bunch of live recordings of Missouri Swagger at CaveCon. But it's gonna be a fun show. It's gonna be September 29th and 30th, so it's coming up. It's gonna be Springfield's, what I consider Springfield's first real comic book convention, and we have a lot of guests. We have Brian Hurt, Tyler Crook, Joe Lansdale, who I'm super excited to meet because I'm such a huge Joe Lansdale fan. Steve Niles, Maat Crook, Brian Quinn from Impractical Jokers, and also my co-writer on the book Metro. Brian Johnson and Ming Chen from Comic Book Men. We got a whole bunch of, and that's just scratching the surface. The guest list goes on and on. Kyle Strom, Baltimore Rivas. I mean, it's going to be a really cool show where you can actually meet a lot of creators. And Josh Roberts, who this was his brainchild, he's the owner of my local shop, the Comic Cave. He's really curating the vendors. He wants them to be a show where you can go and enjoy comics and collectibles. So if you haven't checked it out, please go check out. I think it's CaveCon www.caveconspringfield.com. You can get to the website and see all the guests. Maybe not Dennis. I don't know. He might not be on the site.
Like you have not posted a photo of me, which you have to have. I have so many.
I've got a photo of you I can now post.
Which one is it?
You're Razor Ramon. Cosplay.
Oh, you should post a photo of the two of us from that store signing.
All right. Well, I'll make sure you're on there. But if you haven't looked into it, I think it's going to be a great show. If you're anywhere in Missouri or surrounding areas, I think it's going to be a show well worth traveling for. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I want to see as many people there as I can because I think Springfield deserves a show like this. First year show, so get in on the ground floor. There's my pitch for CaveCon. It's going to be awesome.
Colin genuinely loves Springfield. He lives in Springfield. The one and only time I've ever been to Springfield, I had a police detective thinking that I broke into his neighbor's house. So I guess no, I've been twice. The second time there were no legal problems.
Yeah, I forgot to call that one in on the second visit. I called in the first one. I heard there might be trouble, so I called in. Dennis Hopeless, get him.
So you can invite anybody who comes to CaveCon over to get in your hot tub?
No.
Are you sure?
That's not happening.
All right, fair enough.
All right. So that's it about conventions. We love them. You should animate them. We hope to see you at some.
I mean, they're just exhausting. When it comes down to it, we love them. We love everything about it is exciting when you're going in. It's just like Sunday, hungover, been standing on concrete the whole time, back hurts, and you got to work the next day. It's kind of exhausting.
Yeah, there was one that I think this has never happened to me before, but at Heroes Con a couple of years ago, because I don't usually eat during the day at a convention. I just don't think about it. And I was signing books, and I almost passed out. Like, I stumbled back. I kind of blacked out for about a second. And luckily, either Brian Hurt or Jimmy Z caught my arm, and so I didn't fall. But it's the weirdest... That showed how exhausting it was. It was a Sunday, and not eating probably didn't help. But
hashtag pro tip: you should take produce and nuts and have them at your table so you can eat snacky food that has a lot of nutrients. It's good for you. If you have grapes and snap peas and baby carrots and some almonds there, you don't get super full, but you don't have to go eat potato chips or whatever crap they sell at the convention center, and you keep that energy.
This is not a default face. This is my actual displeasure at you telling me to eat snap peas at a convention.
You've seen me do it. I do
know.
It. I practice what I preach.
And finally, have you ever had con crud, Dennis? Have you ever come back from a con?
All the time, yes.
All the time, yeah. That's my big. I'm terrified of con crud. It's awful. I got it at Heroes Con one year, like the final day, and then we had to drive a 14-hour drive, and I was sick the whole way, and I was. It's the most miserable I've ever been.
Concrete, for those who don't know, is when you shake 1,000 hands over the course of a weekend, and some
take
of the
money if you're at
diseases on them.
Yeah.
And you have to eat sitting there. So if you see creators, oftentimes will have lots of sanitizer sitting there, or they'll like fist bump you instead of shaking your hand. They're not trying to offend you.
Yeah,
they
please
just
don't be offended.
Don't be fucking diseases in their mouths because we have to work the next day.
It's actually for your benefit as much as ours, because you don't want to shake our hands after we've been handling money and talking to other people and eating snap peas and.
Yeah, that's how I get, because I sit there and eat carrots. And I try to wash my hands and keep sanitizer around, but I snack throughout the day. So
carrots will get you sick. Nachos don't get you sick. Carrots, sick.
Tell your cougar story.
All right, so I'll try to make it quick. A lot of people have already heard this story, so and it's not convention related at all. But I'll tell it because Dennis heard it first at a convention, and Dennis heard it first there. Tony Moore, B. Clay Moore. And that's when they all fell in love with me and started to idolize me in some way.
It's true. True story.
So when I was 18, I moved from North Carolina to Missouri. And you'd think the story would take place in Missouri, but it doesn't. It takes place in North Carolina because I would travel back frequently to visit all my friends. And on this one trip, I visited my friend Eric. I was staying at his house. And we were going to get up early one Saturday morning and drive to Raleigh, which was about an hour away. And I'm pretty sure we were planning on going to yard sales and hunting for comic books. But we got up early, and I took a shower, and I came out, and Eric was on the phone. And I thought it was weird because it was so early in the morning. You don't call people that early. That's insulting. And he was standing in front of this big sliding glass door, and he was on the phone. And I said, Eric, what are you doing? And he motions for me. He says, come here, come here, come here. Look, look, look. And I go up to the window, and there is a cougar marching back and forth on his back patio. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I've never seen a cougar out in the wild before, roaming free. That's amazing. And I thought nothing else of it and went back to get on with my business. A few minutes later, Eric called me again, and he was on the phone with the police. What do you do when there's a cougar in your yard? He called me again. He said, Cullen, the cougar ran off. Go outside and don't let it get in the highway. So I said, okay. And I opened the sliding glass door and I walked out. And I started walking around Eric's house. The front of his house faced like a busy highway. Or a busy country road, like something out of Pet Cemetery. And I walked around the house, didn't see the cougar, walked, by the highway, didn't see the cougar, got around to the other side of the house, still hadn't seen the cougar. And I got in between, about halfway between Eric's house and the sliding glass door and safety and these tobacco barns that were over in the, a little ways away. And I looked over, and there, in the shadows of that tobacco barn, was this cougar. And he was crouched down with his paws in front of his face. His eyes were as big as pie plates, and his tail was just whipping around. He was staring right at me. And I called over to Eric, and I said, Eric, I found the cougar. And he calls out. He's got the door open. And he calls out, good, good. Just keep an eye on it. Don't let it get hurt. And I said, it's watching me, Eric. And he's like, it's okay, it's okay. Just make sure you know where it is. And I turn back, and as I turn back this time, this cougar is running at me as fast as it possibly can. Dirt clods are coming up from under its feet, and it's just charging straight at me. And I just called back, and I said, it's running at me, Eric. And he leaned out on his phone. The cord of the phone was holding him. He leaned out and looked, and I turned, and here comes this cougar, and it gets just a couple of yards from me, and it leaps into the air. And all I could do, I couldn't run, so I just held out my hand, straight armed this cougar right in front of me. It hit me, and it threw me back into some bushes, several yards, and it was crawling on top of me. Eric let his dog out. The dog came running up. The cougar popped the dog, and the dog just sort of did this little spin around with a strange, confused look on his face. And I realized I was not dead, and that I had survived this cougar attack, and that the cougar was just gumming me with the side of his mouth. And also I wasn't all cut up from claws. And I yelled out. I said, I'm all right, I'm all right. And I pushed the cougar off of me. And I got up, and I was, I'd been thrown into the ground by a cougar, so I was all a little dirty and messed up, but I was not physically injured. And this cougar was super friendly. It would rub up against you like a kitten. It was purring. I mean, it pounced on me like 3 or 4 times, like playing, like a cat will pounce on you. It just thought I was a fun toy to terrorize.
Gum.
And it ends up, we found out that he didn't have his front claws. And I found out you can own a cougar in North Carolina until they are 18 months old, I think. Or you could. I don't know if you still can. Back then you could own a cougar. And this guy I went to school with owned this cougar, and it had gotten out of its cage or pen or whatever and had wandered over to Eric's house. And this guy came and picked the cougar up. He was in an RX-7, a little 2-seater type car. And the cougar crawled back under the tobacco barn. His name was 8-Ball. And
of course it was.
yes, and the guy went under and put a leash on 8-Ball and drug him out. And the cougar, it was the saddest thing I've ever seen, because this is an animal that wanted to be free, wanted to pounce on aspiring comic book writers, and it just laid on its side, like just completely lost its energy and its will. And this guy drug him back to the RX-7 and put him in the passenger seat and drove off with him.
Almost certainly wearing a sleeveless T-shirt that said "Uzi does it."
Maybe so. Honestly, it would. I mean, I don't remember. I remember the guy. He looked a lot like you, but
Thank you.
but he had a cougar. So when I told this story, you made a joke that I didn't appreciate. What was the joke?
I'm sure I interrupted you in the beginning of the story to ask you to specify whether you meant a cougar, the animal,
Oh yeah.
an older woman who likes younger men. And I thought that was funny. And you looked at me and you said the animal. Because I guarantee every time you tell that story, some jackass makes that joke back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't funny. In my defense, I was probably 24 when I heard that story. And
Maybe.
I was not a smart 24-year-old.
Well, let's be honest. Well, I won't say anything, but you've grown a lot. You've grown a lot.
Okay, with my current brain, I would be a very smart 24-year-old.
Yes. With your current brain, you would be smart for 24.
All right.
So that's it, everybody. If you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, and check out our other videos. I forget what it is. I wanted to say Hopeless Cast.
When it's a podcast, I'm going to explain the Hopeless Cast at some point.
We'll do that next time.
All right.
We'll Hopeless Cast it next time.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Thanks.